Non-Farm Payroll. The Employment Situation Report, often referred to simply as Non-Farm Payroll after the most significant section of the report, measures unemployment rates and the number of jobs created or lost each month. It is reported monthly by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'll post a link for the report in the text that accompanies the video. The report starts with a complete summary. It is only a couple of pages, and one can get most of the information from the report simply reading this section. Following the summary is a series of tables. The first table contains the major indicators of the labor markets. The subsequent tables contain the information from the first table broken down into much more detail. The data used in the report comes from two separate sources. The first is a household survey, and the second is the establishment survey. So basically, the Employment Situation Report is two completely separate reports combined into one. The household survey counts the number of people employed and unemployed. The establishment survey counts the number of jobs created and lost. The two most important statistics that come from the unemployment report is the unemployment rate, which comes from the household survey, and the number of non-farm jobs added or lost that month, which comes from the establishment survey. These are the main statistics reported in the media each month. The household survey. The purpose of the household survey is to see how many people are employed. Data for the household survey is gathered by a telephone interview. Each month, the government contacts 60,000 homes by phone and asks a series of questions relating to their employment condition and status. The responses are then used to generate the household survey. Because it is measuring the number of employed people and not the number of jobs created or lost, the household survey includes farm workers, the self-employed, and domestic help. The unemployment percentage rate comes from the household survey. The unemployment rate is calculated by dividing the number of those in the workforce that are not working by the entire labor force. If the labor force is 200 million, and from that 12 million are out of work, then the unemployment rate is 6%. So looking at the report for January 2010, in December 2009, 15,200,000 were out of work. The labor force is 153 million. That is a drop of 660,000 in the labor force, and an additional 73,000 in people lost their jobs. The establishment survey. The establishment survey is sometimes called the payroll survey. The purpose of the establishment survey is to see how many jobs were created or lost that month. Data for the establishment survey comes directly from businesses. Each month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics contacts 400,000 companies and government agencies by mail and phone and asks questions regarding changes in job numbers. Usually only 60 to 70% of these responses make it back in time to be included in the initial release of the report, so report releases often contain revisions from previous reports. Typically, smaller companies take longer to respond, so the revisions tend to carry more data from smaller companies than larger ones. Small companies tend to let employees go faster at the beginning of downtrends and add employees faster during the first stages of recoveries. So revisions to the establishment survey can sometimes have a big impact on the markets. Because of the seasonality of farm work, farm workers are not included in the establishment survey. The report also does not include the self-employed or domestic help. On the far right column is the change in jobs from the previous month. In other words, the number of jobs created or lost that month. So in December of 2009, there were almost 131 million jobs, but that was down 85,000 jobs. To give an idea of which areas of the economy are most affecting employment levels, the category is then split into two sections: service providing and goods producing. Goods producing is broken down into construction and manufacturing, and service providing is broken down into retail trade, professional and business services, education and health services, and leisure and hospitality. There is also a section for government, so apparently you don't have to provide a lot of service to be considered service providing. Actually though, it is important to watch this section because governments are not trying to make a profit. So the economy doesn't affect government employee levels as highly as it does the private sector. Also, sometimes the government can add or let go a lot of employees at one time, possibly giving a false impression of the condition of the economy. Also included in the Establishment Survey is a section for the average number of hours worked each week, along with a section for the average number of overtime hours worked each week. On the right-hand column is the increase or decrease of hours and overtime hours worked each week. The average number of hours worked each week, and especially the average number of overtime hours worked each week, is an excellent indicator for changes in GDP. When demand increases, workers must work more to meet that demand. When demand decreases, workers have less goods to make, so hours and especially overtime hours decrease. Below that is a section for average hourly earnings and average weekly earnings, and that should be self-explanatory. When people make more money, they spend more, and when people make less, they spend less. That's the end of part 1. I'll continue on in the next video. See you then.